ain't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It is your boy Ernie, the Blerd Without Fear. And today I have a special guest. If you've been following the channel for a while, you have probably seen me talk with a special guest before. But I got David Pepose with me, who I would say probably you would be at the very least familiar with because of the currently running cable Love and Chrome. You've also done work on various other stuff, not the least of which Moon Knight, as well as the currently running Space Ghost. Got the Space Ghost annual coming up, and we're going to be talking about that. David,
yeah.
How you doing?
I'm doing great, Ernie. So good to catch up with you. Yeah, excited to talk all things comics with you tonight.
I always enjoy our talks.
Me too.
You've had a lot going on. You've had you got a tremendous amount of stuff, on your plate, and I'm just like, man, I love to see it. But you've been absolutely knocking it out of the park. On Space Ghost, you got Captain Planet literally like knocking on the door, like
2 weeks, I think. Yeah,
2 weeks. And just you just been kind of doing your thing, and just how are you keeping it all together?
I really a lot of my life is how do I pace out kind of the work that I'm doing, and always trying to figure out how do I refine the process and figure out ways to kind of simplify without kind of sacrificing the quality. And it's with I always say with great difficulty. I'm at a good spot where I can write about a script a week. And so, I'm at a fairly comfortable position where I'm writing 3 books simultaneously. But it's just it's always an ongoing process, and thankfully I'm working on a trio of books right now that they all feel very natural to me. And so I'm able to kind of like take the lessons I've learned with some of my other books and figure out like, okay, like here's how I can kind of streamline that process a little bit more. And beyond that, it's just every time I finish a script, take like a day or two to kind of rest and recover, and then hop back into the grind.
You've got it down, because I've been telling people that talking about any of the stuff that you're working, I'm always just like, yep.
Thank you.
Oh, I told y'all.
I think I've been very fortunate to be able to work on these books that like the characters make sense to me, whether it's Speed Racer or it's the crew on Captain Planet. It's what I was working on today. Was the 5th issue of that, and to Space Ghost, where I just looked over the colors for that annual this morning. I know these characters really well now, which is a gift. I think in the marketplace is very volatile right now. It is very much geared towards series formats. And so the ability to have a little bit of runway, like I have with Space Ghost, has been a gift as a writer, getting to learn these characters in and out and kind of figure out like, okay, if you threw Space Ghost in a situation versus Jan versus Jace, they would all act a little bit differently. And so I'm really excited for fans to get to see, especially with the Space Ghost annual, kind of the capstone to our year of stories on that book.
And that's something I tell people all the time when talking to them about Space Ghost, that I liked the original anime series and the relaunch, all that stuff, but like I was never like super duper mega ultra like knowledgeable, like super duper dialed in on it to the point where like I could tell you anything more than like something passing about it. And what I've loved about the series is you have done it thus far. Of course, there are like there's characters that I think everyone's with even just a little bit of like tangential knowledge of Space Ghost. I feel like most people at the very least, or even if they don't know them by name, they know them by appearance. Characters like Zorak and Brack, Moltar, stuff like that. But like what kind of let me know you were the truth was I don't remember the exact issue number, but it was when the Creature King came into play, and I was like, man,
that was
David's
a fun.
really changed how I looked at this.
I I was really waiting for that issue for a long time. That was one of the first ones I came up with. I appreciate you saying that. Like I think but like you, I mean, I grew up in the 90s. You know, I was
Mhm,
obviously well past like the heyday of
mhm,
like the original Space Ghost run. I my introduction was Coast to Coast, like many of my
mhm,
gen. And so when you tackle nostalgia books like that that you were not actually like growing up during, like that means there's a lot of research involved. You know,
mhm,
so I watched all those cartoons, and I did the same thing with Speed Racer. It's probably the most time consuming part of the whole process was just like, okay, you gotta like download all those, you know, like whereas like Captain Planet, I was really fortunate that like I was like, okay, I've grown up with this. Like I actually
mhm,
characters like through my pop culture DNA. But you know, I think something for Space Ghost in particular is because, you know, there was the original cartoons, but they were very short. You know, they
yeah.
weren't necessarily like the most sophisticated of storytelling. Alex Toth's designs did so much of the heavy lifting,
Yeah.
and between that and then Coast to Coast having such a wildly different approach to those characters, and then even Joe Kelly and Ariel Olivetti, like they did a Space Ghost mini that also had a very different take from that.
Mm,
That kind of gave me, I think, a degree of license to say, okay, like, you know, I know these characters, but I also know their potential. And so I can kind of filter that through my own likes and my own storytelling instincts and make kind of, you know, it's the best of both worlds that we're able to take like a known superhero property, but it's not really that known. And so I'm able to take kind of a personal twist on it. And so you know, nobody, me least of all, I had no idea if that was going to work.
mhm,
But thankfully, people seem to really respond to this. And I think it's because ultimately, deep down, I think we all come from the same place as comics fans, is like we're in it for a fun story. We're in it, you know,
mhm,
especially superhero books, we're in it for like the larger than life pyrotechnics and the action and the morality tales and the character beats. And so yeah, I am really excited that people have responded to it in such a way and given us the opportunity to tell more stories beyond this.
I always tell people this, and I feel like they don't believe me, but having an overarching narrative is always great. But like, there is always something to be said for kind of like that classic, like you think back to like some of those old, like 60s, 70s comics.
Yeah,
You had like your Journey into Mystery or Tales to Astonish, whatever, stuff like that. Whereas a lot of times it would just be like, hey, this is the story that's happening, and you get a good like beginning, a middle, and an end, in the same comic, but like with the promise of more adventure to come. And I
sure.
feel like that's a lost art. Uh,
Yeah. Well, you know, you're right, and I think some of that. It's
mm,
funny. If you haven't subscribed to Tom Brevoort's newsletter, you should. I read it
mm,
every week. And not just because like he's been my editor at Marvel for so long, but just like I really respect
right.
his opinions and you know any opportunity to learn. And he had mentioned in this week's newsletter, there was a series, and I'm blanking on which one it was, but the creators involved. This was the 90s, of course. You know,
Mm,
they were more predisposed to doing duns and ones, and the market was shifting away from that. They wanted these
mm,
longer, you know, the precursor to the trade paperback format, you know, mainstream. And I think we are starting to see a little bit of a shift back, is that I think people, there are a lot of stories that maybe decompression's a tough thing to pull off. Some people can do it really well, but like I think by and large, it's not, it's an approach that can result in burned trust. And so I think, and you know, people say, "Oh, writing for the trade," and for me,
mm,
my thinking is like, yes, I want the trade to work.
yeah.
Obviously, for the sales, but like I do want this. We are selling monthly comics, and so I want to make sure that every chapter has a satisfying chunk in the way that Heidi McDonald dubbed it. And the person that I really want to shout out as far as our approach for Space Ghost, it was Ryan North. His take on
Mhm,
Fantastic Four was a huge influence on what we were doing on Space Ghost. I remember being very taken with that done in one approach,
mhm,
and the fact that you can still tell a satisfying story in an issue, or even my two-parter on Fantastic Four that led into Ryan's run. I was like,
mhm,
oh, that's a two-part story. You can do an effective like setup and payoff that way. And I know that Tom and I talked about this a bit, even with my Punisher miniseries. And
Mhm.
I think the only downside to trying that approach on a 4 issue mini is that like this is an approach that really works when you have a longer runway to do so. That people then
Right.
start seeing like, oh, this is exponential. Every time you
Mhm.
see the words "the end" in a story and then come back for more, you feel that much more investment with these characters. And so I think trying to do that done in one approach was an interesting challenge for me, but I think it's kind of rewired the way I write in a lot of ways.
Mm.
I tend to get restless, and this way I can bounce between different genres and different tones and different influences, but also like structuring something in an issue or structuring something across 2 issues. That really makes sense to me. And so um, yeah, I've been really pleased that that fans and retailers especially have been really excited with that approach. And so we're doing
Mhm.
something similar in Speed Racer
Mhm.
that's launching in July. Is those are done and also done in ones and done in twos. Specifically, it's easy to dip in and dip out, but also
Mhm.
like every month I'm going to go to the comic shop and I'm going to get a satisfying story, or at least to the best of my ability. And you know I I think you're right. I think it is a little bit of a lost art. I think tastes are starting to shift back to that done in one model, that self-contained model. People just want to know that they can trust their stories. And I think that's how we do it.
You literally kind of took something like right out of my head, like as I was thinking it. The Ryan North Fantastic Four is some of the best. It's some of the best Fantastic Four I've read in a long time. And that's not a small thing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Fantastic Four out there, and a lot of it's good. So I
Yeah.
mean, that's saying a lot. What I have appreciated is because you were talking about kind of giving that kind of complete tale and not burning trust. That was because that's something I always feel when I talk to people about books that they're currently reading, and I always will see someone say like, oh, they did this one thing with this one character, and I just know I'm gonna have to read like 10 or 15 or 20 issues, or whatever, a couple of trades to get the payoff, or or see
Yeah.
or like or like they'll talk about a weird character turn they felt went on too long, or didn't
Yeah.
make any sense. And one of the things I actually really appreciated, and I find myself saying this a lot, is talking about respecting someone's time and the investment of their time, without going into any like spoilers or anything, just in some of the more recent issues of Space Ghost,
Yeah.
there's been instances where characters have like fallen out of favor with each other, or like hey, I don't know, I'm kind of thinking maybe I might do my own thing, or hey, I don't like the way so and so looked at me, but it's not something that
Yeah.
gets like drug out for a particularly long time. It's like, hey, this is like, just like with the, anything in real life, you have a bump in the road,
Yeah.
maybe your friendship, or your partnership on somewhere along the journey, you hit a pothole, but you deal with that, and you kind of course correct, and you keep the party going. And that's one of the things I really liked about this series, is even when those things happen, like it doesn't get drug out or anything. It doesn't feel unnatural. It doesn't feel like a CW show, where it's like, hey, I have to, like, how are we gonna drag this thing out for 22 episodes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're
you know.
right. Like that the done in one approach helps with that, is that we can
Mhm.
try different things, but like we can always kind of reset back to status quo or something close to it, or an evolved version of the status quo. And so
Mhm.
yeah, I think also in an industry where like series length is not guaranteed, um,
Mhm.
I think being able to sort of maximize whatever runway you have. It's one thing if you're doing a 4 or 5 issue thing, then I think that does have to kind of be just one story. But I
Mhm.
think if you're able to say, okay, like if I get 10 issues, or in the case of Space Ghost, my initial commitment was 13. Being able to say like, okay, we have 13 issues of runway. I could tell three kind of short arcs with that, and that approach
Mhm.
does sometimes work. Dan Waters with Batman Dark Patterns is a great example of that. My favorite Batman book of the stands, but you know, at the same time, I'm not writing Batman, and so having like 13 issues of runway, saying, okay, if I can tell 8 or 9 stories across that, that maximizes that sense of investment,
Mhm.
and it's paid off because now we get to tell more stories with that.
This is something I was curious about too, because one of the last issues of Space Ghost, I wasn't sure how to like what to expect, and you had kind of already given me a little bit of a heads up
Yeah.
on what was going on, and even when I was sitting down to read it, I was like, oh, okay, all right, well. I was like, damn. But you kind of had brought in what I thought was a really nice update to the Space Spectre,
Yeah, thank you.
which was like it was not what I would like. I like even kind of knowing a little bit going in, I was like, I was like, wow. I was like, this is pretty freaking awesome. Um, and like where everything is at, with the entire gang, Space Ghost, Jan, Jason Blip, like where everybody is at right now, by the time you get to the end of that, and you're kind of coming into this annual, because your annuals are always or not always, but sometimes you usually get like either one really big story, or you get like some maybe a normal size story, and maybe like some little smaller stories. Like, how are you tackling the Space Ghost annual?
Big story is the
Mhm.
answer.
Mhm.
Yeah, you know, when I initially wrote this, I thought it was going to be my last issue, and so I figured let's, have a big kind of blockbuster, bombastic kind of finale to this Council
Mhm.
of Doom, this Council of Doom RoboCore ongoing storyline, and so yeah, that was extremely helpful, kind of giving me a little bit of extra runway in order to tell those stories. Now things have shifted a bit.
Mhm.
That Dynamite approached me and said, we're really enjoying Space Ghost, like we'd like to extend it. And so, without spoiling anything,
Mhm.
I reconfigured some bits of that annual to say, like, eagle-eyed fans will know that I actually left some breadcrumbs in an earlier issue for where our series is going to be headed. And I kind of I threw them in there thinking I don't know if I'm going to get to use this, but if I do, suffice to say that, like, our Space Ghost annual, what it's going to be is that RoboCore's plans involving Blip are finally going to be revealed.
Mhm.
And it's going to have far-reaching consequences for the rest of the galaxy. And Space Ghost and Jan and Jace are really the only ones that can stop this. And it dovetails into our Council of Doom storyline in a really fun way. Because, this whole series has been about a found family unit. Space Ghost
Mhm.
being a widower, and Jan and Jace being orphans, and sort of how they come into each other's orbit and wind up, kind of not just becoming a partners in crime fighting, but also, it's like a surrogate father and his surrogate kids.
Mhm.
And their teamwork, their sense of kind of building themselves up into this unit with all the kind of dysfunction emotionally that comes with it, has been an ongoing part of the series. And so pitting them against the Council of Doom is particularly interesting because that is a group that's sort of been thrown together ad hoc by Xander Abal, the CEO of RoboCore. And they've got very different ways of doing things than the Space Ghost team, but it's also a team filled with very strong personalities. And so you're going to be seeing a bit of that play out in issue 12. And then
Mhm.
when we get to our annual, you'll see kind of the flip side of all that. It's hard to explain without spoiling, but you'll see it in a way, and you'll get a sense of who's really been kind of pulling the strings for this whole storyline up to date. Yeah, I'm very excited for all this. We get to really see Space Ghost and Jan and Jace each step up in their own individual, unique ways. But I'd say that the hardest challenges are ahead, and you're
Ooh.
gonna see, our series has always been this cocktail of like the superhero action, what's the villain of the month, but also the interpersonal drama between Space
Mhm.
Ghost and the ends that their relationship is always a little bit in flux. It's always either one step forward or one step back. And we're gonna be throwing like a wrecking ball through that dynamic in this annual, and that's going to play out in our stories to come, is that there is a huge complication coming for
Mhm.
them that they did not expect. All I can say is that we've already lit the fuse for this. You've already
Okay.
seen the fuse get lit. You probably you didn't notice it yet.
Mhm.
But yeah, all I can say is that the last like 3 pages of the Space Ghost Annual are gonna like change that whole team in a big way. That they're gonna be dealing with the fallout of all that for the rest of our series to come.
Oh wow. Which I gotta say, I'm actually really excited that Dynamite has put a lot of faith behind the series because seen it too often where books that I'm like, man, this is phenomenal, or man, this is so great, or man, this is so fun, and they usually get their legs cut out under 'em before they can really you know uh you know really reach that audience. And I was just really, like I said, I was very happy when I saw so many other people, not just myself, talking about the book. So it's I feel like that's gone a long way. A lot of people like really getting behind this, and I'm glad that Dynamite did too.
Yeah, I'm
But
I'm I'm very pleased with it.
mm,
Like this is the longest I've ever written a book.
mm.
I was
What's
just
been the
thinking
longest like before Space Ghost?
it was Savage Avengers. I wrote 10 issues of that.
Yeah, okay.
And before that I had written 8 issues of Spencer and Locke.
Mm,
But I've turned in my 14th issue of Space Ghost so far, and I'm about to start on the 15th.
wow.
In today's marketplace, that's like no mean feat. And
No.
I that was one of the appeals of this book was that, this was the longest runway, even with 13 issues. That was the longest runway anybody had ever offered me.
Mm,
Even Marvel, with Savage Avengers, the most that they could commit to from the jump was 10. And I give
mm,
Word a lot of credit because once we got word that we had to write Conan out of the book by issue 5, Marvel would have had every right to say, okay, that's it. Like we're turning it into a mini, we're downgrading it. And so I give Tom all the credit in the world for like
mm,
standing by the word and being like, we committed to 10, we're going to give you 10. So, I wanted to prove though that I could do it.
mm,
I like writing miniseries. I like the idea of kind of a short sprint, a self-contained story. This is kind of a numbers game in a lot of ways,
mm,
a career is, but also comics, the lifeblood, what people really want, and it goes back to trust. They want to
mm,
know that, like, okay, this is a story that I can invest in. This is a story that will be around for the long haul. And it's not to say that miniseries don't have their place. I think any sort of miniseries that's got a sharp hook,
mm,
and can serve as a different perspective on a character that's already gotten love elsewhere. But I do think that we've seen a lot of miniseries, and I think
mm,
people might be burned out on that format. They want to know that they can, like, every month go in and pick up a book like Spider-Man or
yeah.
Batman, or that's why Invincible has gotten such a nice resurgence, well deserved,
Yeah.
and I would love Space Ghost to be a book like that where people are
Mm,
like, okay, we've got, even if it's a year, and
right.
thankfully it seems like we've got more than that. It's nice for people to like be able to kind of build trust with them. And so yeah, it was really nice that Dynamite not only offered me that initial runway, but it was around end of last year. It was probably like just before the election.
Mm.
They were saying like, hey, like we would like to do some more. Do you have any ideas with this? And so I've thrown out some. I don't want to spoil anything. You'll see kind of the twin kind of big landmarks of the next leg of the run in the annual.
Okay.
And longtime fans of the cartoon will recognize both pillars. But if not, you'll figure it out as the series progresses. I would love to do more. I've always said like I'd love to do more stuff like a Space Stars revival, get the Herculoids, get the Teen Force in there. And I think if I did that, I think a good argument for doing like bigger storylines. That's something that you can
Yeah.
like an Infinity War in like the
Mm.
Stars universe. Um, you
I
know,
would eat. I would eat that up.
you can do. I've pitched the ideas a few times, and
Mm.
we'll see. I would love to do it. I think some of that's a little bit above my pay grade, but um, if Warner Brothers is interested, and Dynamite's interested, like I could certainly do another like 8 to 10 issues just on the Space Stars alone. So
Oh man. Dude. Look, man, I'm not gonna lie. That would be pretty damn awesome. Because I've literally heard people like especially because some of the not just Space Ghost being on the shelves right now, but you got the Herculoids book on the shelf right now. And it's like these properties are like kind of getting that adrenaline, that shot of adrenaline again, where people are like, oh yeah, I remember this. Oh, dude, and it's back. Okay, like I see this out in the wild all the time, and it's like, so I know, like, yeah, people would get with that book. People would get with that book in a heartbeat.
write your congressman. I would love to do it.
I remember a time where like a licensed comic used to be like a dirty word sometimes, like where
Yeah,
like oh hey, this is that comic that's based on that cartoon that comes on on the
right.
weekends or whatever. It's like, and it was one of those things where like even if they were good, I remember being a kid and I remember, what was it, the Batman animated series comics would be on the shelf at the comic shops or in like the supermarket or whatever. I'm gonna show a little age here, because they don't sell comics in supermarkets anymore. But I remember seeing this like, oh, that's really cool, and I check it out and be like, oh, this is fine.
Yeah,
It's okay, but it's not like the same. But
yeah.
like I can honestly say, like, yeah, when you tackle these books, like I'm like, no, this is the vibes. These are the same vibes.
Daniel Warren Johnson, I think
Mhm.
his Transformers run and really everything in the
Yeah.
Amazon universe, I think has really been the tip of the spear. And I think Dynamite was kind of like a perfect follow,
Mhm.
secondary salvo for all that.
Mhm.
Declan Shalvey on and Drew Moss on
Yep.
Cats and
Oh yes, the
Casey.
gargoyles.
Yeah, I think those types of books pretty, they were kind of like licensed books don't have to feel like cash grabs. They don't have to
Mm.
feel phoned in. They don't have to feel necessarily even like just like, oh, here's an extension of the show. They can
Mhm.
kind of their own thing. They can have artistic interpretations to them and have their own voices. And I give Dynamite a lot of credit. It would have been very easy for them to just be like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like we'll just get kind of like, whatever artist on the book and just, crap something out. And
Mhm.
I think for me, I am not established enough in my career to like phone anything in. Um, like I'm not, I think the theme of our conversation's been about trust, right?
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
and I haven't been around long enough. I haven't done enough to build that kind of like ironclad trust. I'm not Hickman, I'm not Scott Snyder. I'm not James. Those people, like, they've done enough that you
Mhm.
you know their name and like, okay, I'm going to get a certain type of experience reading. I'm I'm not there. And so I did this book, honestly feeling like I had something to prove.
Mhm.
And not only was it my first book with Dynamite, and I've known Nick Barucci for a long time, but also, like I had done some smaller stuff at Marvel, but like this is
Mhm.
the first time that anybody was offering me like an ongoing opportunity. Or well, Savage Avengers, technically. I want to make sure that like people can see that. Yeah, and I think that's kind of the approach that I keep taking is that like if I wanted like an easy job, I wouldn't be in comics. Like I I do comics because I love it and because
Right.
like I want to make something that feels not enduring. I mean that sounds pretentious, but like I want to make something that that people like it and that people
Yeah.
get something out of it.
Like
And
has a staying power.
yeah, that's a better way to describe it. And I yeah, I think trying to say that that's what sort of been my resolution the last couple of years is just that thankfully I think I've gotten past the point in my career where I there was no job I couldn't say no to, you know.
Hmm.
And I think that happens a lot of times early in people's careers, and it is a double-edged sword because there are a lot of really great careers that I think either maybe stall out or get delayed because they find themselves in a position where they are offered an assignment that they shouldn't have taken, but they
Hmm.
felt like they had no choice. And I've been in that
Yeah.
before myself. Uh,
Hmm.
and I think now I'm in a position where like I can be slightly more choosy, where I can
Hmm.
say, listen, like does this thing feel right? Does this feel like something I could
Hmm.
do a decent job on? Does this feel like something that will be beneficial on both sides? Or is this
Hmm.
something that like, you know, I'm not the guy to make that thing work? Uh,
Hmm.
and thankfully with Space Ghost and Speed Racer and Captain Planet, especially Captain Planet, which I asked for that book.
Hmm.
I and even Speed Racer, when they floated it to me, I was kind of like, oh yeah, I could do something that could be really fun. Um, there's something like you deliver better work when you actually feel confident in it, which like
Right.
big shock, right? Um,
Who
you
would
know,
have thought?
who would have thought? Um, and so yeah, I feel very fortunate to be able to have books like Space Ghost and Speed Racer,
Hmm.
Captain Planet, where like I, I really am. I'm trying to throw my best fastball with every issue, and
Hmm.
trying to do something different, trying to learn from the experience, trying to just be better. With every outing, and um, yeah, knock on wood. Hopefully, it all works out. But I do feel I'm proud of the work, and I think that's
Yeah.
like as long as you can say that, then everything else is gravy.
You'll have a writer out there that's doing lights out work. Yeah, but you always know like writers they want to tell a story, so they're always going to have some kind of a story that they want to share. At some point, even if they're working on something else.
Sure.
And I was curious because other than like Punisher, some of the other ones like Moon Knight and stuff like that, have you had that itch to dive back into your creator owned bag?
Totally. Well, I have a creator-owned book coming out in October, 10-Ton Titan
Ooh.
Terrier, through Paper Cuts. That's my first age-appropriate book, I will say. It's perfect for like the Pixar crowd.
Yeah.
But I
That's a
pitched
nice way
it.
to say it. Yeah.
Yeah, like a Pixar version of Pacific Rim, is kind
Oh,
of.
okay. You had me right there. That's all you had to say. Yeah, there you go. I'm in.
Pokemon meets the Iron Giant kind of story. And there's another creator-owned project that I'll likely probably get started on in like the coming months. We're just figuring out some like final contract wording.
Okay.
But and yeah, it's great. I'll say it. Like it's with Alex Cormack, like from Devil That Wears My Face. I loved working with them, and so
Ooh.
you know, that's just a matter of my schedule, kind of like my bandwidth reopening a little bit more. Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking a lot about the creator-owned sphere and trying to figure out like what I want to do in it. And I've been really fortunate with my past creator-owned stuff, and that's made it a little bit of a double-edged sword, is that I've really hit all the major food groups in some way.
Hmm.
I've done crime books with Spencer and Locke, and I've done romance with Going to the Chapel, and I've done uh, post-apocalyptic sci-fi with Scout's Honor, and I've doing fantasy with the OZ, and horror with The Devil That Wears My Face, and now Terrier with my all ages thing, and even Grand Theft Astro, which we're slowly getting off the ground.
Hmm.
Like that's a sci-fi crime sports thing, like
Hmm.
and so it's figuring out like I want to take that next step. I want to find kind of that thing. I'd love to do an ongoing.
Mhm.
I think it's finding the concept that'll go the distance.
Mhm.
The thing that's kind of what juice is going to be worth the squeeze. And I haven't quite cracked it yet. I'm really excited for this other creator-owned project with Alex. You know, but I think once I finish that, I do want to do something in the ongoing sphere.
Mhm.
I think that's the future. I think that's something that you see some really interesting creators doing work like that. You see Dennis Camp with Assorted Crisis events. You see Kieran Gillen with Power Fantasy. Uh,
Mhm.
those are the two immediate creator-owned stuff. Anything that Rosenberg's doing,
Yeah.
and so um I do think that there's a degree of like, all right, like that's where the trends are going. And I don't mean to say it as like chasing a trend, but just saying that
All
like
right.
people like that security of knowing, hey, this
Mhm.
go a little while. And
Yeah.
so I think for me it's figuring out, I'm building my endurance still. I think Space Ghost and Speed Racer are going to be really helpful with that. And in terms of teaching me and training me how to tell a longer form story that I can then kind of figure out what's a concept of mine that can go that distance. Because I do tend to think in a little bit more self-contained um, uh, uh, spaces. And so, yeah, that was the long answer to your question is yes, definitely more creator owned stuff to come. The return of the OZ to Kickstarter, Ruben Rojas literally is drawing his last 2 pages as we speak. That Kickstarter will go on a little later this year. I was originally going to do it earlier in the year, but the release dates with Captain Planet and Speed Racer kind of complicated that. So I
Mhm.
think once Speed Racer has kind of gotten its legs under it a little bit, um, that'll be that'll be next. But definitely doing it this year. I'm very excited to wrap that long storyline up,
Mhm.
and yeah, and to get the finale in your hands.
I can say this much, just based on the stuff that I've checked out of yours, knowing that you and Alex are hooking back up, that has me excited because I say was like it's something that existed in another timeline. I am a huge fan of the devil wears my face. So like seeing that y'all are gonna be doing something again. That actually makes me really excited. For whatever it is, I always get excited seeing people who are writers whose work I enjoy, but also writers I respect. Like I enjoy seeing them kind of finding that footing in whatever space it is that they're in. And I like I said like I look forward to anything Space Ghost that you're doing. I mean that's off top. But the fact that I can say I'm excited that I get to read a speed racer comic in 2025 of all years. I get to read a speed racer comic. I mean that is something I think that I actually never I don't think I ever really actually ever saw coming. So I guess even though I know technically I'm probably can't say too much about it right now, but is there any like little bit of a tease you can give for your upcoming speed racer?
The great news is that comics fans will be able to get our first story with that in our free comic book day special, which is coming out next weekend.
Mhm.
And so I'm really excited. That is a fully self-contained story that kind of sets up the world and Formula X and why is that so important to Speed and to Palm City. But the pitch that I had for Speed Racer is it's Rocky in a race car. It's the story of how Speed goes from sort of just winning like back alley races to becoming a champion of the Formula X racing circuit, and
Mhm.
why is entering that championship so important for him, and why, are the stakes so high for him personally? And yeah, I'm so excited about that book. First off, David Tinto is drawing the absolute hell out of that book. He is doing such a brilliant job on it. And you'll see it from that free comic book day issue. You'll see it with issue one that's coming out in July. You'll see it, we'll see it over the long haul, I think, as David keeps drawing. And so, what I love about Speed Racer is unlike Space Ghost and even unlike Captain Planet to an extent, um, there's no superpowers in this
Right.
book, And I think having written predominantly superheroes for the last few years, I love writing superpowered characters. There's cool stuff you can do with the concepts and the metaphor, but it can also be a crutch, that like you're piling on the spectacle and you're trying to figure out how does this change their world forever and the stakes have to be universal. And Speed Racer I think is really refreshing for me because it's all personal.
Mhm.
Like the stakes, you'll see the stakes in issue one, and you'll see them really unfold in issue two. But beyond like just will Speed survive this race? Racing is dangerous. But also just like these are very human characters, and their motivations are very personal, whether it's oh, boy, I almost spoiled it. Uh, uh, Suffice to say, there's a lot of the family dynamic,
Mm,
with the Racer family. I would
mm.
say, like for example, we'll see Speed and Trixie's relationship
Okay.
really really grow from the ground up. We're going to see their very first meeting in issue one,
Mm,
and so and they've got kind of like a Hal Jordan, Carol Ferris, will they or won't they thing that goes on through the series as
mm.
that's the spoiler I'll give is that when Speed does need to join Formula X racing, it means he needs to join a team, and the only team that can take him is owned by Trixie. And so,
Oh, okay.
it's a bit of a complicated dynamic in that they're both very clearly into each other, that they both love racing, they love cars, but they also come at it from these diametrically opposed angles. And she's his boss. And
Mm.
so there's a little bit of tension that goes on there. Um, but the only real power, so to speak, is the cars. And you'll get to
Right.
see kind of what makes a Formula X car a Formula X car. It is not your standard race car. Every car has its own X factor, its own kind of special weapon, whether it's the buzz saws or if it's a skull and chain mace or it's Bende bombs, or
Mm.
the GRX engine, for example. And the cars themselves also have their own individual wrinkles that suddenly turns the sport of racing into a little bit of 4D chess. And so that really kind of like adds some interesting flavor
Mm.
to these races. And I think speaks to the original cartoon. So if you haven't watched the original cartoon, it's all good, like Space Ghost and Captain Planet. This is brand new continuity. But if you are a fan of the cartoons, I watched all of them. I took detailed in every episode. So we will be including like all sorts of fun characters, the car acrobatic team, like I said, the GRX engine, the Melange, and of course, the Great Mammoth Car, along with Racer X and how he kind of swerve in and out of our story. Mark Russell will also be doing a Racer X spinoff book, a spinoff mini that'll be coming out
Okay. All
not
right.
too long after ours. He has a fun backup short in our free comic book day issue. Um, so yeah, I think this book really is the best of all worlds. You get a race in every issue.
Mhm.
Every issue we are going to see Speed behind the wheel. The Mach 5 is such an important
Mhm.
part of all this, and um, but also like it's the human drama behind all of it.
Mhm.
It's what pushes Speed on this mission to win. It's what's the dynamic with him and Trixie. It's how does he live up to not just his brother Rex's legacy, but also like his dad Pops and his younger brothers.
Mhm.
Sprite is one of my favorites. We sort of reimagined him as a little bit more of a streetwise kind of hustler of a younger
Mhm.
brother. He live
Okay.
streams he live streams all of Speed's races and like encourages all of his subscribers to bet big. Um,
I love it. I
make him
love
a
it.
little, make him a creature of the modern era.
I
So
like that.
I'm excited for people to see what we've got planned. Like I said, David is doing such an amazing job. Rex Locus, our colorist, Buddy Bowden is doing amazing work in the lettering, and all of our covers that we just announced this week. So I'm really thrilled for it. Mad Cave has been such an excellent home for me. They've been very supportive of my career, really from the jump. Mark
Mhm.
Lund and Chris Fernandez have been wonderful to work with, and so you know, when they floated the idea of Speed Racer, I was like, not only am I excited about this property, not only am I excited about the types of stories you can tell in a Speed Racer book that you can't really tell anywhere else, but
Mhm.
it's also just it's Mad Cave, and Mad Cave has been so good to me historically over the years that I'm very excited to be in the driver's seat with them on this one. And so, if you like what we're doing on Space Ghost, I think you're gonna love what we're doing on Speed Racer.
I'm already sold. So, but I do want to say, just for anyone else, if any of this, any of anything that you've heard thus far, if it piqued your interest, if it got you curious on any level, hey, head on down to the shop, hit up your LCS. You're going to be able to pick up a free comic book day copy of Speed Racer. So maybe go take a look, take a peek, see what you're gonna see what's going on. If you like what you see, ask for it in your pull box. If Space goes, we got the annual coming up. We still got a little more time for that one. Same, hey, ask for it in the pull box, because that is, you're short of like wishing on like a magic genie's lamp is the most surefire way, well, to not only make sure you get a copy of it, but also make sure you keep getting copies of it. It's it's a dirty secret. It's a dirty little secret, and I don't want to keep it a secret anymore. You got to use the pull box.
Yes, it's a huge help for books like ours, for sure.
It's the power of the pull box. So make sure you go do that. I'll have links, as always. Some of y'all know the drill by now, I hope. I'll have links down below for if you wanna order direct from Dynamite for the Space Ghost annual. That'll be there for you, just in case you don't have an LCS in your area, which is a sad day for all of us if that's the case. Like I said, there'll also be links down below. I actually highly encourage go check out The Devil That Wears My Face. I have a link down there below. You can go pick up a copy of that. Go check out the Savage Avengers issues that David has done. Go check out all of it. There's tons of stuff down there. There's all sort. And I guess when you said the Kickstarter gonna be arranged, that's not gonna be till like a little later
A little later in the year,
a little later in the year.
I'll be shouting that one from the rooftops when that happens.
Well,
I will let everybody know.
well, we'll have you back to come talk to us about that one. But I will also say, go follow David on socials. I have links to where you can follow David. That way you maybe you don't miss out on anything. Go click all the links, go do all the things, and I guess outside of I know we talked a little bit about Space Ghost. We talked a little bit about Speed Racer, Captain Planet. Don't forget, couple of more weeks. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, David, I think it might be a little too late to catch the first printing if you haven't already asked for it to the pull box. But I mean, you can
Probably.
still,
But I'm sure
yeah.
your comic shop, I can imagine I'm hoping that they bought extra copies uh
Mhm.
if they liked Space Ghost. So yes, definitely check out Captain Planet. I'm so proud of that book. It's X-Men meets Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Mm.
It is a really fun new take on the whole series, and I'm writing issue 5 right now as we speak. And the Planeteers are just such fun characters to write, as is Cap himself. And so, yeah, that is a book that if Space Ghost is kind of my Batman, these are my X-Men, and
Oh.
I couldn't be prouder of how that book is coming.
Well, I will say this much. The fact that this is a book that we probably need now more than ever, which might say a lot about the state of things, but it could not be more timely if it tried. So I am like I said, just go go to the LCS. Just go to the LCS and ask for it. Just go do it.